Rain hit my face like tiny needles as I stood on my parents' porch at midnight. My clothes were soaked through, my suitcase handle broken, everything I owned getting drenched beside me. I knocked again, harder this time, my knuckles raw from the cold. The porch light clicked on. I saw movement through the frosted glass. My mother's silhouette appeared, then my father's beside her. They stood there looking at me through the window for what felt like forever. Mom, Dad, please. I lost my job. The landlord locked me out. I have nowhere else to go. My voice cracked on the last word. The door opened just 3 inches. My mother's face appeared in the gap, her expression harder than I'd ever seen it. No warmth. No concern. Just cold judgment. Leah, you made your choices. You insisted on moving to the city against our advice. You refused that accounting job your father arranged. You wanted independence so badly.
She paused.
Well, this is what independence looks like.
Mom, please.
Just for tonight. I'll figure something out tomorrow.
No.
You're 28 years old. It's time you learned that actions have consequences.
The door closed.
The lock clicked. Then the porch light went dark, leaving me standing in complete blackness with rain streaming down my face. I stood there for another 10 minutes, hoping they'd change their minds. Hoping my father would override my mother's cruelty. The house stayed dark and silent. Finally, I picked up my broken suitcase and walked back into the rain. My phone had 3% battery left. I scrolled through contacts, trying to think of anyone who might help at this hour. Most of my friends had moved away after college. The few who remained weren't close enough for this kind of emergency. I walked 6 blocks to a 24-hour diner called Mel's. The warm air inside felt like salvation. A waitress with kind eyes and gray hair looked up from wiping tables. Rough night, honey? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She pointed to a corner booth.
Sit.
I'll bring coffee. I stayed there until morning, nursing 2 cups of coffee I could barely afford. The waitress, whose name tag read Gloria, never asked me to leave. Around 5 in the morning, she brought me a plate of eggs and toast. On the house, she said when I tried to refuse. Everyone needs help sometimes. I cried into those eggs. A stranger showed me more kindness in 5 hours than my own parents had shown me in 5 years. When the diner got busy with breakfast customers, I knew I had to leave. Gloria slipped me a card for a women's shelter downtown. They're good people, she whispered. They'll help you figure things out. The shelter was a converted church basement. Clean but crowded. A woman at the intake desk handed me forms without judgment. She'd seen this story 1,000 times. We have a bed available. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. You can stay up to 30 days while you look for work and housing. We also have job training programs and counseling services. I filled out the forms with shaking hands. When I reached the name section, I wrote it slowly, like saying it out loud would make this nightmare real. My name is Leah Warren. I'm 28 years old. 3 days ago, I had a job and an apartment. Now I'm homeless. When I got to the part asking for emergency contacts, I left it blank. The woman noticed, but didn't comment. They assigned me a small locker and a bed in a room with 8 other women. Some were older, some younger. All of us carrying invisible weights. That first night, lying on a thin mattress surrounded by strangers, I realized something important. No one was coming to save me. Not my parents. Not old friends. Not some miraculous opportunity. If I was going to survive this, I had to save myself. The shelter had a morning routine. Wake at 6, breakfast at 7, everyone out by 8 unless you had an approved reason to stay. I spent my first full day walking downtown, filling out applications at every store and restaurant I passed. My dress shoes gave me blisters. My interview outfit, the only professional clothes I owned, was wrinkled from the suitcase. I felt people's eyes on me, judging, knowing somehow that I was homeless. By afternoon, my phone died completely. No charger. No money to buy one. I was cut off from the digital world, from job alerts, from any connection to my old life. At a coffee shop bathroom, I washed my face and tried to fix my appearance. The mirror showed someone I barely recognized. dark circles under my eyes, hair limp and tangled. The confident woman who'd moved to the city 3 years ago was gone. In her place stood someone broken, someone whose own parents had turned their backs on her. I returned to the shelter at 5, exhausted and discouraged. During dinner, another woman sat across from me. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes and worn hands. "First week?" she asked. "Second day." "Gets easier. I'm Tara."
Leah.
"Nice to meet you." We talked while we ate. Tara had been homeless for 6 months after a divorce left her with nothing. But she'd found work, saved money, was close to getting her own place again. "It's possible," she told me. "You just have to keep fighting." Tara became my lifeline over the next few days. She knew all the tricks. Where to get free phone charging, which churches gave out bus passes, which businesses were actually hiring despite saying they weren't. "You got an interview lined up?" she asked on my third day. "Coffee shop on 5th Street. Tomorrow at 10. She looked at my shoes, noticed the blisters. Without a word, she went to her locker and returned with a pair of clean flats. "Wear these. Can't interview well if your feet are killing you. I can't take your shoes. You're borrowing them. Big difference." She smiled. "We help each other here. That's how we survive." The next morning, wearing Tara's shoes, I walked into that coffee shop interview with more confidence than I'd felt in days. The manager, a woman named Patricia, asked about my work history. I was honest about losing my job, vague about my current situation. "We need someone reliable," she said. "Weekday mornings, some weekends. $8 an hour plus tips." It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. "When can you begin?" "Tomorrow." Patricia nodded. 6 in the morning. Don't be late. I left that coffee shop with my first real hope in a week. The first week at the coffee shop was brutal. My alarm went off at 4:30. I'd shower at the shelter, dress quickly, and catch the first bus downtown. By 6, I was behind the counter learning to operate the espresso machine. My feet ached constantly. Burns from steam covered my hands. Customers were often rude, impatient, treating me like I was invisible or stupid or both. But I smiled through it. Showed up on time. Never complained. Patricia noticed. By the end of week 2, she pulled me aside. "You work harder than anyone I've hired in years. I'm adding you to the weekend schedule. That's double shifts Saturday and Sunday. You interested?" More hours meant more money, meant getting out of the shelter faster.
Yes.
Absolutely yes. I worked every shift she offered. Saved every dollar I could. At the shelter, I attended the financial literacy workshops. I learned about budgeting, credit repair, emergency funds. Things I should have known before, but somehow never did. After a month, I'd saved $400. It felt like both everything and nothing. Enough to prove I could do this. Not enough to change anything yet. But it was progress. And progress, I was learning, was everything. 6 weeks after that rainy night on my parents' porch, my phone rang at the shelter. I'd finally bought a charger, got my phone working again. The number was my younger brother, Kyle. I hesitated before answering. "Hello." "Leah?" "Jesus, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Where have you been?" "It's complicated. Why are you calling?" "I heard some crazy rumor that you're homeless. Please tell me that's not true." I closed my eyes. "Where did you hear that?" "Mom mentioned it to Aunt Barbara. But she said you ran off with some boyfriend and got yourself in trouble. That you refused to come home when they offered to help." The lie punched through me like a fist. Of course, they'd rewrite the story. Make themselves look generous. Make me look reckless and ungrateful. "Kyle, that's not what happened." I showed up at their door soaking wet, begging for help. Mom turned me away. Dad didn't say a word. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "That can't be right. Call them. Ask them directly.
See what they say."
He promised he would, but I knew he wouldn't. It was easier to believe their version than face the truth about our parents. 2 days later, I did something I'd been avoiding. I took the bus to my parents' neighborhood and waited until their car pulled out of the driveway. Then I approached the house I'd grown up in. I still had my old key. It still worked. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. The same furniture, same photos on the walls, same smell of my mother's lavender potpourri. I went to my father's office and found what I needed: my birth certificate, social security card, old bank statements. Documents I'd need to rebuild my life properly. On my way out, I passed through the living room. That's when I noticed the family photo wall. Dozens of frames showing holidays, birthdays, graduations. Every picture of me was gone. Not just removed, replaced. Photos of Kyle in places where I used to stand. Empty spaces filled with generic landscapes. They'd erased me.
Completely.
I left without taking anything else. Without leaving a note. Without slamming a door or breaking something in anger. I just walked out, locking the door behind me, knowing I'd never use that key again. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist? Fine. I'd make sure they remembered me eventually. 3 months into my coffee shop job, a regular customer started asking questions. His name was Mr. Benson, maybe 60, always ordered black coffee and read the newspaper at the corner table. "You're wasted here," he said one morning after I'd handled a difficult customer with perfect professionalism. "You've got something most people don't. Real work ethic. Real intelligence." "Thank you," I said, uncomfortable with the attention. "I own a marketing firm downtown. We need an entry-level assistant. Someone organized, detail-oriented, willing to learn. Pays better than here. Benefits too." I stared at him. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you." He handed me a business card. "Benson Marketing Solutions. Come by tomorrow. 2 o'clock. We'll talk properly." I showed up at 1:45, wearing my one interview outfit, carrying a folder with printed copies of my resume. The office was small but professional. Mr. Benson introduced me to his team, 5 people who seemed genuinely nice. The job was mine if I wanted it. $12 an hour to start. Health insurance after 90 days. A real desk. A real chance. I gave Patricia 2 weeks' notice that afternoon. My first day at Benson Marketing felt surreal. I had a desk with my name on it, a computer that actually worked, people who treated me like a professional instead of a servant. The learning curve was steep. I'd never worked in marketing before, but I stayed late every night, studying industry websites, teaching myself software, volunteering for extra projects. Within a month, I was managing social media accounts for 3 clients. Within 2, I was creating content calendars and writing copy. Mr. Benson noticed. "You're a natural," he said during my 90-day review. "I'm promoting you to junior account manager. 20% raise." I wanted to cry, but held it together.
Thank you.
"You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," he said gently. "I saw something in you that day at the coffee shop. Someone fighting hard to survive. I just gave you the chance. You did all the rest." That night, I signed a lease for a small studio apartment. $700 a month. It wasn't much, 400 square feet, old carpet, no dishwasher. But it was mine. My space. My independence earned. I moved out of the shelter on a Saturday. Tara helped me carry my few belongings to the bus stop. We cried when we hugged goodbye. 6 months after moving into my apartment, I did something I'd been dreaming about. I went to my parents' church on Sunday morning. They attended every week, sat in the same pew, sang the same hymns. Model Christians. Pillars of the community. People who believed in charity and compassion and helping those less fortunate. I sat in the back row where they wouldn't notice me. Watched them sing about grace and mercy. Watched my mother smile at neighbors. Watched my father shake hands with the pastor. The sermon was about the prodigal son. About welcoming home those who'd strayed. About forgiveness and second chances. My mother dabbed at her eyes during the emotional parts. Such a godly woman. Such a caring soul. I wondered if she ever thought about that rainy night. If she felt any guilt. If she'd convinced herself her version of events was true. Before the final hymn, I slipped out. I'd seen enough. They could keep their performance Christianity. I'd learned real kindness from strangers in a shelter. From a waitress who bought me breakfast. From a woman who loaned me shoes. Faith without action is dead. They'd taught me that in Sunday school years ago. Funny how they'd forgotten it. 1 year after that rainy night, I was promoted again. Account manager. 48,000 a year. My own small office with a window. It felt like winning the lottery. I moved to a better apartment. 1 bedroom, updated kitchen, in a safe neighborhood. I bought real furniture instead of secondhand pieces. Started building a life that looked normal from the outside. I sent a change of address notification to my parents. Not because I wanted contact, just to prove I existed. To show I'd survived without them. They never responded. No call. No card. Nothing. Kyle called occasionally, updating me on family news like I cared. He was engaged. Planning a summer wedding. Mom was excited about grandchildren someday. Dad's business was struggling, but he was managing. He never invited me to visit. Never asked if I was okay. Just gave me information like I was a distant relative instead of his sister. I stopped answering his calls after a while. What was the point? He'd chosen their version of reality over mine. That was his choice. Just like they'd made theirs. I focused on work. On building something real. On becoming someone who mattered. Benson Marketing landed a major client that spring, a regional restaurant chain expanding into our state. They needed a complete rebrand, new website, social media strategy, everything. Mr. Benson assigned me to lead the project. It was huge. Terrifying. Exactly what I needed. I worked 16-hour days for 3 months. Created presentations, pitched ideas, revised based on feedback. The client loved everything. The campaign launched in June. Within 2 weeks, the client's sales jumped 28%. Their social media following tripled. Industry publications started noticing. A local business journal interviewed our team. They featured my strategic work prominently. My name appeared in print for the first time. Leah Warren, account manager, credited with innovative approach to digital marketing. The article published on a Tuesday. I bought 5 copies at the newsstand. That afternoon, Kyle texted, "Mom saw your article. Nice work." Just that. No call from her. No congratulations. Just acknowledgement that she'd seen proof I existed. Proof I'd succeeded despite everything. I threw the text away without responding. If that was all she had to say, she could save it. 2 months after the article, Kyle called with an actual question instead of an update. "Mom wants to know if you'd come to dinner. Sunday at 6. She says she misses you." I laughed out loud. After 2 years? She suddenly misses me. Come on, Leah. She's trying. Can't you meet her halfway? Something in his voice made me suspicious. But curiosity won.
Fine.
Sunday at 6. I dressed carefully. Not too nice, not too casual. I wanted to look successful, but not like I was showing off. When I arrived, Mom hugged me too tight. Dad shook my hand like I was a business associate. Kyle and his fiancée were there too, looking uncomfortable. Dinner was awkward. Forced conversation about weather and Kyle's wedding plans. Nobody mentioned the past 2 years. Nobody asked where I'd been or how I'd survived. Finally, over dessert, Dad cleared his throat. "Leah, we need to discuss something. My business has hit some difficulties. Unexpected expenses, market changes. We're facing some financial pressure." There it was. The real reason for the invitation. Mom touched my hand. "We were hoping, since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help us through this rough patch." I set down my fork carefully. "How much money are we talking about?" 50,000 would cover immediate debts, Dad said. "We'd pay you back, of course." I almost laughed. They thought I had $50,000. Thought 2 years of working could produce that kind of savings. "I don't have that money," I said quietly. Dad's expression hardened. "Kyle showed us that article. You're obviously doing well for yourself. I make a decent salary now, but I'm still rebuilding from being homeless. The homeless situation you created." Mom's face flushed. "We don't need to revisit past disagreements." "Disagreements? You locked me out in the rain. Erased my photos from your wall. Told people I ran away with a boyfriend. That wasn't a disagreement. That was cruelty." "You were so stubborn," Mom snapped. "We tried to help you, but you refused our guidance. I knocked on your door begging for help. You turned off the porch light and went to bed. Kyle looked shocked. His fiancée stared at her plate. Dad stood up. If you can't help your family when they need it, then I guess I was right about you all along. You're selfish. I stood too. Grabbed my purse. I survived sleeping in a shelter while you slept in your comfortable beds. I think we have different definitions of selfish. I left without saying goodbye. That dinner changed something in me. Before, I'd been working to survive, to prove I could make it. Now, I am working to build something bigger. Something that would make them regret every choice they'd made. I started my own marketing consultancy on the side. Warren Creative Solutions. Just me at first, working nights and weekends. Taking small clients Mr. Benson didn't mind me having. I learned everything. Business registration, taxes, contracts, invoicing. I watched YouTube videos until 2 in the morning. Read business books at lunch. Turn my apartment into an office. My first client was a bakery owner who couldn't afford Benson Marketing's rates. I charged her $200 to redesign her Instagram presence. Within a month, her sales increased 40%. She told another small business owner, who told another. Suddenly I had 5 clients, then 10, then 15. I worked my day job and my business simultaneously, slept 4 hours a night, lived on coffee and determination, lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. But it was working. After 6 months, my side business made more than my salary. After 9 months, Mr. Benson called me into his office. "You're leaving," Mr. Benson said. Not a question. I'd been careful. Never poached his clients. Never worked on my business during office hours. But he'd noticed. "I'm thinking about it," I admitted. He smiled. "Good. You should. You've learned everything I can teach you. Time to build something of your own." I don't want to leave ungratefully. "Leah, I hired you because I saw potential. That potential is becoming reality. Go build your empire. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When you're wildly successful, remember the people who helped you get there. Be the kind of boss I tried to be." I gave 4 weeks' notice. Used that time to transition my accounts properly. On my last day, the whole office threw me a party. The next Monday, I woke up as my own boss. Warren Creative Solutions officially launched with 17 clients and a waiting list. I rented a small office space. 1 room, shared bathroom down the hall. But the door had my name on it. Gold letters on frosted glass. Leah Warren, founder and CEO. 2 years after sleeping in a shelter, I had a business with my name on the door. The business grew faster than I'd planned. Within 6 months, I hired my first employee. Within a year, I had a team of 5 and moved to a larger office. Revenue climbed steadily. 50,000 the first year. 200,000 the second. $500,000 the third. We landed bigger clients. Won industry awards. Got written up in business publications. I barely slept. I barely ate. I built the company like my life depended on it. Because, in a way, it did. Every success was proof I'd survived.
Proof they'd been wrong about me.
Kyle called occasionally with updates. Dad's business had failed completely. They'd lost their house, moved into a smaller rental. He was working part-time at a hardware store, Mom doing bookkeeping for a medical office. "They're really struggling," Kyle said. "It's hard to watch." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sympathy. Just emptiness where family feelings used to be. "They might need to move in with me and Stephanie," he continued. "Our house is small though. Kids need their bedrooms. It's going to be tight." He paused, waiting for me to offer help. I stayed silent. "I guess I'm saying if there was any way you could." "No," I interrupted. "There's no way." He didn't call again after that. Year 4 of Warren Creative Solutions brought something I'd been dreaming about. The company hit $2 million in revenue. I paid myself a salary of $300,000. I bought a house. Not just any house. A mansion overlooking the ocean. 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, infinity pool, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the water. 4,000 square feet of space for just me. I hired an interior designer, filled the house with beautiful furniture, original artwork, custom everything. One guest room I decorated myself, put up photos I'd restored from my childhood. My face at 6, 12, 16. The pictures they'd removed from their wall. Not for nostalgia. For closure. To prove I existed. To prove I'd survived without them. I stood on my back deck watching sunset over the ocean. I thought about that rainy night 4 years ago. About sleeping in a shelter. About blisters from borrowed shoes. That broken girl was gone. In her place stood someone powerful. Someone successful. Someone who'd saved herself. The security system buzzed on a Saturday afternoon 6 months after I'd moved in. I checked the camera screen. 2 people stood at my gate. Older, tired-looking. Carrying suitcases. My parents. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Part of me wanted to ignore them. Let them stand there like I'd stood on their porch. Turn off the intercom like they'd turned off the porch light. But I was curious. What could possibly bring them here after 5 years? I pressed the button. Yes. My mother's voice came through, trembling. Leah? It's Mom and Dad.
We need to talk to you.
Please. About what? Can we come in? It's important. I thought about saying no. About watching them turn away with nowhere to go. The symmetry would be perfect. Instead, I pressed the gate release button. They walked up the long driveway slowly, staring at the house. At the landscaped gardens. At the 3-car garage. Their expressions were identical, shock mixed with something else. Regret, maybe. I met them at the front door, but didn't open it immediately. Let them stand there waiting. Let them feel what uncertainty felt like. Finally, I opened the door. Nice place, Dad said, looking around the foyer. The chandelier overhead probably cost more than 3 months of his hardware store salary. What do you want? I asked. No pleasantries. No pretending this was a normal family visit. Mom's eyes were red. We have nowhere else to go. Kyle and Stephanie can't take us. Their house is too small. We've been staying in a motel, but we're almost out of money. And you thought you'd come here? You're a daughter, Dad said, like that explained everything. I led them to the living room, made them sit on my expensive furniture, offered them tea, which they accepted. We sat in silence while the kettle boiled. I poured 3 cups, set them on the coffee table, then sat in the chair across from them. I remember the last time I asked you for help, I said quietly. I was soaking wet, standing on your porch. I'd lost everything. I begged you to let me in for one night. Mom looked at her tea. You told me I'd made my choices, that I needed to learn about consequences. Then you turned off the porch light and left me in the dark. We thought we were teaching you responsibility, Mom whispered. You taught me something. Just not what you intended. Dad cleared his throat. We made mistakes. We're asking for a second chance. To live here? I clarified. You want to move into my house? Temporarily, Mom said quickly. Just until we get back on our feet. A few months, maybe. I sipped my tea. Let them wait. Let them feel the power imbalance. If I agree, and that's a massive if, there will be rules. Boundaries. This is my house. I make the decisions. They nodded eagerly. You'll help with my charity program. I run a foundation that assists women rebuilding after homelessness. You'll volunteer 20 hours a week. No excuses. Of course, Dad said. No manipulation. No guilt trips. Not trying to make decisions about my life or my money. The first time you cross those lines, you leave. Immediately. We understand. And no rewriting history. You turned me away when I needed help. That happened. We don't pretend it didn't. Mom started crying. We're so sorry, Leah. We didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose to protect your comfort over my survival. Now you're here because I'm your last option. I stood up. There's a guest room on the 2nd floor. You can stay there. But understand something clearly. This isn't about forgiveness. This is about me choosing to show you the mercy you denied me. The first month was awkward. They lived in my house, but we barely spoke. They volunteered at the foundation like I'd required. helped organize donation drives, served meals at the shelter. One evening at dinner, Mom asked, "Aren't you tired of holding on to the past? Don't you want to move forward as a family?" I set down my fork, looked at her directly. "I'm not holding on to the past. I'm living past it. There's a difference. You're still trying to pretend that rainy night didn't define who we became. I'm building my entire life on the strength I found after it." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We've apologized. What more do you want?" "I don't want anything from you. That's what you're not understanding. I don't need your approval, or your love, or your validation. I survived when you decided I wasn't worth saving. I built this life alone. You're here because I allow it, not because I need you." The room went silent. For the first time, they seemed to understand the power dynamic had permanently shifted. I wasn't their daughter begging for scraps anymore. I was the person deciding their fate. It was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. Not revenge, exactly. Just the truth. Just reality, finally being acknowledged. 3 months after they moved in, a local news investigation broke. They were exposing fraudulent business practices in the construction industry. Dad's company was mentioned prominently. The report detailed how he'd cut corners on safety, overcharged clients, used substandard materials. Nothing criminal enough for prosecution, but enough to destroy whatever reputation he had left. Former clients gave interviews. "He seemed trustworthy," one woman said. "But he took our deposit and disappeared for months. The work he finally did was terrible." Dad tried to blame circumstances. Market conditions. Difficult clients. Everyone's fault except his own. At dinner that night, he brought it up. That news report was completely one-sided. "They didn't tell me my version." "What's your version?" I asked. "I was trying to keep the business afloat. Made some hard choices. They're acting like I was some criminal." "Were the allegations true? Did you overcharge people? Use cheap materials?" "Business is complicated. You wouldn't understand." I smiled. "I run a $2 million company. I understand business perfectly. What I don't understand is blaming others for your choices. If you'd helped us when we asked." "Don't." My voice went cold. "Don't make this my fault. You made bad decisions. You face consequences." Sound familiar? 6 months after moving in, they announced they were leaving. Found a small apartment in a retirement community. Government assistance would cover most of the rent. The night before they left, Mom came to my office. I was working late, reviewing proposals for foundation expansion. "Can we talk?" she asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, looking small and old in a way I'd never noticed before. "I want you to know," she said slowly, "that watching you build all this has been humbling. You turned out stronger than we ever imagined possible." "No," I corrected. "You just never imagined I'd survive without you. There's a difference." She flinched. "You're right. We underestimated you completely. We thought if we stayed firm, you'd come back apologizing, ready to follow our guidance. Instead, I learned I was better off without you." "Yes." She wiped her eyes. "I see that now. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, even if I have no right to be." I didn't respond. Some wounds don't heal just because someone acknowledges them. "Will you ever forgive us?" she asked quietly. I thought about it honestly. Maybe someday. But not because you need it. Because I decide I want to. They left on a Sunday morning. Dad loaded their car while Mom stood in the foyer one last time, looking around. "Thank you for letting us stay," she said. "Even after everything." "You're welcome. Will we see you again? For holidays or birthdays?" "I don't know. Maybe. We'll see." It was the most honest answer I could give. I didn't hate them anymore. But I didn't love them either. They were just people I used to know. People who'd taught me I could survive anything. I watched their car disappear down the driveway, then closed the gate behind them. Inside, I walked through my mansion. 6 bedrooms. 5 bathrooms. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A life I'd built from nothing. From less than nothing. In my office, I opened the file for the Porch Light Project. My foundation's flagship program. We'd helped 147 women in 2 years. found them housing, jobs, dignity. I gave them the help I'd needed and didn't get.
My phone rang.
A reporter wanted to interview me about the foundation's expansion. The name is interesting, she said. The Porch Light Project. What inspired it? I looked out the window at my own porch light. I'd installed motion sensors so it turned on automatically whenever anyone approached. Always welcoming. Always bright. Never dark. Because some lights should never go out, I said. No matter who needs them. After the interview, I stood on my back deck watching sunset paint the ocean gold and purple. 5 years ago, I'd been broken. Homeless. Abandoned by the people who should have protected me. Now I was here. Successful beyond anything I'd imagined. Not because of them. Despite them. That rainy night had been the worst moment of my life. But it had also been the beginning. The moment I learned I was strong enough to save myself. I'd keep that porch light burning. For every woman who needed to know she could survive. For every daughter abandoned by her parents. For every person told they weren't worth helping. And for myself. To remember where I'd been. To honor how far I'd come. To prove that sometimes the people who break you teach you exactly how strong you really are. The gates to my mansion stood closed behind me. But my porch light glowed bright. Always on. Always ready. Never turning away anyone who needed help. That was my revenge. Not cruelty. Not bitterness. Just becoming everything they said I'd never be. Just proving that their rejection had only made me stronger. I walked back inside my beautiful home, turned on more lights, and got back to work. There were more women to help. More lives to change. More lights to keep burning. And this time, I was the one deciding who got left in the dark.